I used to believe that if you kept your life orderly, chaos would get bored and move on. Bills paid on time, credit clean, conversations calm. I'm not a loud man. I don't argue unless there's a reason. I prefer facts to theories and documents to assumptions. That approach served me well for most of my life and for the first 9 years of my marriage. Order was our quiet agreement. We didn't dramatize problems. We documented them. If something broke, we fixed it. If something didn't make sense, we reviewed it later. I thought that kind of structure made a life resilient. For context, because it matters, my name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm 39 years old. My wife, Lena Caldwell, is 36. Lena was the opposite of me in temperament. Cheerful, social, the kind of person who could turn a bad day into a funny story by dinner. People liked her immediately. She called it energy. I called it momentum. Once she started moving in a direction, she rarely stopped to check what she'd stepped on. For a long time, we balanced each other. Then the paperwork started to change. At first, it was harmless. New mail, more envelopes from banks I didn't remember choosing. Lena would grab them first, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "Just boring stuff," she'd say. "I'll handle it." I let her. That was the arrangement. I handled structure, she handled flow. What I didn't notice, what I should have noticed, was how comfortable she was becoming with other people's money. How easily she talked about bridges, temporary solutions, short-term fixes. She was also spending more time on her phone, not hiding it, just very relaxed about turning away, cheerful, distracted, present enough to avoid suspicion. One evening, she mentioned her ex-boyfriend, Alex, casually. "I ran into him," she said, laughing. "Life is strange like that." I nodded. "How is he?" "Oh, you know," she replied, "always chasing something." I should have asked what that something was. I didn't. The first clear sign came a week later when my credit monitoring app sent me an alert. New loan inquiry. In my name. I stared at the screen for a long moment, calm settling in instead of panic. Panic clouds judgment. Calm sharpens it. When I asked Lena about it, she didn't hesitate. "Oh, that?" she said brightly. "It's nothing serious. I was just consolidating things. Helping us, really." "Without telling me?" I asked. She smiled. "I knew you'd worry." That was the moment I realized something important. She wasn't afraid of being caught. She was confident I'd accept it. And confidence like that usually means there's more you haven't seen yet. I didn't argue with her. That surprised Lena more than anger would have. She expected resistance, maybe frustration. What she got was silence and a request for details. "How much?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly, still smiling. "Not much, just enough to smooth things out." That wasn't a number. She waved it off. "You're always so exact." "Yes," I said. "That's why the loan is a problem." She laughed softly, like I'd made a dry joke. "Ethan, it's temporary. I'm managing it." Managing. Another word that sounded responsible without meaning anything. That night, after she went to bed, I logged into my credit accounts, not emotionally, methodically. I treated it like a system audit. If something didn't belong, it would show itself. It didn't take long. There were 3 loans, 2 personal, 1 business credit line, all opened within the last 6 months, all in my name, all tied to an address I recognized but hadn't questioned. Alex's. The cheerful confidence Lena carried suddenly made sense. She wasn't improvising. She had a structure, a second life, financed by a name she knew would carry weight. Mine. I printed everything. paper slows people down. It forces clarity. The next morning, she was unusually upbeat, humming while making coffee, talking about a weekend trip she wanted to take just to reset. I watched her closely now. The ease, the warmth, the way she didn't seem burdened by risk. "You're quiet," she said lightly. "I'm thinking," I replied. "About?" "Exposure." She smiled. "You always think too far ahead." "No," I said. "I think exactly as far as necessary." That afternoon, I called my brother. Mark, 42, works in the court system. Not a judge, but close enough to understand how judges think. He listens more than he speaks, a useful habit. When I told him what I'd found, he didn't interrupt. When I finished, he said one thing. "She'll deny intent, but paper doesn't." We met that evening, spread the documents across his dining table. Loan agreements, signatures, dates, patterns. "She committed fraud," Mark said calmly, "but more importantly, she assumed liability would never be challenged." "So what's the move?" I asked. He leaned back. "We don't confront her yet, we prepare." "For what?" "For the moment she realizes she's not in control anymore." I nodded. Lena thought this was a story she was writing. She didn't realize she'd already signed herself into the ending. Once you stop listening to what someone says and start watching what they fund, everything becomes clear. I didn't confront Lena. I didn't even change my behavior much. Reserved men are underestimated for that reason. We don't announce shifts, we implement them. Her schedule had a rhythm now. Late afternoons, running errands. Short trips that required careful outfits. Phone calls taken in the car. Voice light, almost playful. She wasn't hiding, she was comfortable. Comfort is dangerous. I followed the money first. Payments from my loans flowed cleanly into accounts tied to a small business registered under Alex's name. No employees, no revenue, just expenses, rent, equipment, travel. A life being assembled carefully, like a stage set. Then I followed Lena. One Thursday, I left work early and parked 2 blocks away from a cafe she claimed was just quieter. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I saw them through the window. Alex looked older than I remembered, less confident. He leaned in when he spoke, like someone always trying to stay relevant. Lena sat across from him smiling, too easily, too freely, the version of her I didn't see at home anymore. She reached across the table and slid an envelope toward him. Paper. Not romance, not affection. Logistics. That night, she came home energized. "Good day?" I asked. "Productive," she said cheerfully. "I feel like things are finally moving forward." "With what?" I asked. She paused, then smiled again. "You'll see." I didn't ask more. The next morning, another alert came in. Loan increase approved. I didn't feel angry. I felt confirmed. I went back to Mark. "She's escalating," I said. He nodded. "Then it's time to give her a choice she doesn't expect." We spent hours mapping it out. The law didn't care about emotions, but it cared deeply about signatures and benefit. If Lena could be shown as the primary beneficiary, the debt could be reassigned. "But she'll never agree voluntarily," I said. Mark smiled slightly. "She won't think she's agreeing to anything dangerous." That made sense. Lena didn't see risk, she saw opportunity, and people like that always assume they're the smartest person in the room. "She's cheerful because she thinks she's winning," Mark continued. "We let her think that a little longer." I went home and watched Lena laugh at something on her phone. I recognized Alex's name on the screen before she turned it away. For the first time, I felt something close to resolve. Not revenge, not anger, balance. She'd taken out loans in my name to build a life without me. Now we'd build a path where she'd take them with her. Lena became generous once she sensed momentum. That's how she always was. When she felt ahead, she shared just enough to look fair. One evening over dinner, she casually mentioned stress. "Everything's moving so fast," she said cheerfully. "Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying too much alone." I looked up. "Alone?" She nodded. "I mean financially, strategically. You don't really enjoy that side of things." This was new. Not blame, positioning. "So what are you suggesting?" I asked. "Well," she said lightly, "maybe it would make sense if I formally took over more responsibility, on paper. That way I can move faster without worrying about bothering you." I took a moment. Calm is convincing when it's genuine. "What kind of responsibility?" I asked. She smiled. "Loans, credit, business exposure. I already handle most of it anyway." There it was. Mark had predicted this exact phrasing. People don't like stealing control. They prefer being handed it. "I'd want protection," I said evenly. "If your projects grow, I don't want personal risk hanging over me." She laughed. "You're always cautious, but yes, of course, we can structure it cleanly." Cleanly, another word she loved. Over the next week, she brought documents home. Drafts, proposals, reassignments framed as efficiency updates. She explained everything with enthusiasm, glossing over details with confidence. I asked questions, not too many, just enough to appear engaged. Mark reviewed everything quietly at night. Redlined clauses, adjusted language, inserted triggers. By Friday, the plan was complete. Lena signed the first document, smiling. "Feels good to streamline things," she said. I nodded. Clarity usually does. She didn't notice the shift, how liability followed benefit now, how guarantees moved with authority, how her signature quietly replaced mine everywhere that mattered. She signed again on Monday, and again on Wednesday, each time more cheerful than the last. Alex's company was now officially funded by her, not me. By the end of the week, the loans were no longer a shared burden. They were hers. That night, she poured wine and raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said brightly. I lifted mine. "To accountability," I replied. She laughed, not realizing how precise that word was. The moment Lena believed everything was secure, she relaxed. That's the danger with cheerful, cunning people. They mistake silence for ignorance and calm for consent. She stopped watching her words, stopped double-checking my reactions. Confidence makes people careless. She started talking about Alex openly now, not emotionally, practically. "He's finally finding his footing," she said one evening, scrolling through her phone. "He just needed someone who believed in him." I nodded. "Belief can be expensive." She smiled. "Not when it pays off." That same week, Mark told me it was time, not to confront her, to inform her. We chose a Saturday morning. No rush, no audience, just facts delivered cleanly. I made coffee. She sat across from me at the table, relaxed, unaware. "I reviewed the documents again," I said, "the updated ones." Her smile didn't falter. "Good. I told you everything was clean." "It is. Very clean." She waited. "The loans," I continued, "are now entirely in your name. All guarantees, all liability, all exposure. Legally, they're yours." She blinked once. "Yes, that was the point." "No," I said calmly, "that wasn't your point, that was mine." Her smile faded slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm no longer attached to them, not as a co-signer, not as a guarantor, not as a fallback." She frowned. "Ethan, you agreed." I agreed to protect our household, I said, and I did. Her tone sharpened. You're being dramatic. No, I replied, I'm being accurate. I slid the final document across the table, the one Mark had insisted she read after everything was done. She scanned it quickly at first, then slower, then very slowly. Her expression changed, not anger, not fear, calculation. You planned this, she said. Yes, I replied, after you did. She leaned back. So what, you think this scares me? Alex's company is about to turn around. Possibly, I said, or possibly not. Either way, the outcome belongs to you. She laughed, sharp and forced. You're trying to punish me. No, I said, I'm stepping out of the way. She stood up abruptly. You're choosing paperwork over your wife. I met her eyes. You chose paperwork over your husband first. Silence settled between us. For the first time since this began, Lena wasn't cheerful. She was thinking. And that's when I knew she finally understood. Lena didn't argue after that. That was unexpected. Instead, she recalibrated. The cheer returned but altered, sharper, more deliberate. She started treating the situation like a negotiation instead of a conflict, which told me she still believed there was a way to win. You're being very rigid about this, she said a few days later, folding laundry with exaggerated calm. We're married. What's mine is yours. That stopped being true when you borrowed under my name, I replied. She smiled without warmth. You always reduce things to rules. Yes, I said, rules are what separate mistakes from crimes. That word landed. She changed tactics after that, less charm, more urgency. Alex, she said, was under pressure. The market was shifting. Investors were nervous. If the loans were called early, it would ruin everything. For whom? I asked. For us, she said quickly. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. A week later, Mark called me. She's been asking questions, he said. Quiet ones. About reversals. About shared liability. Can she undo it? I asked. No, he replied. Not without your consent, and not without admitting intent. That was the trap, one she'd walked into, smiling. That evening, Lena came home unusually subdued. No laughter, no lightness. She sat across from me at the table and said, If Alex fails, I'll be the one holding everything. Yes, I said, that's how responsibility works. You knew this would happen, she said. Yes, I replied, just like you knew I wouldn't notice. Her eyes hardened. So this is revenge. I shook my head. No, this is correction. She stood up. You're cold. I'm consistent, I said. She packed a bag that night. Not dramatic, not rushed, just efficient. As she stood by the door, she said, You think you've won. I don't think about it that way, I replied. I think about exposure. She left. And for the first time in months, I slept without numbers running through my head, because whatever happened next would no longer happen to me. Reality caught up faster than Lena expected. Alex's business didn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It stalled. Payments slipped. Promises stretched thinner each week. Cheerful optimism can't substitute for revenue, and creditors are famously unimpressed by enthusiasm. Lena called me for the first time in days. Not angry, not emotional, careful. They're asking questions, she said. Banks, lenders. That's normal, I replied. They like answers. You could help, she said, just temporarily. We're still married. No, I said evenly. We're still legally separate where it matters. Silence. You set me up, she finally said. You set yourself up, I corrected. I just stopped standing underneath. She tried again later, with a different tone, lighter, almost playful. Alex thinks you're overreacting, she said once, like that might matter. That's unfortunate, I replied. Alex doesn't carry the debt. Her cheer cracked after that. The calls started coming daily, then hourly. She forwarded me messages at first, then stopped. Pride has a shelf life. Mark kept me updated. Quiet filings, notices sent, timelines closing in. She's running out of options, he said. I know, I replied. One evening, Lena showed up unannounced. No smile, no brightness, just fatigue. I didn't think it would be like this, she said. That's because you thought liability was theoretical, I answered. It isn't. She looked at me then, not as a partner, not even as an enemy, but as someone realizing the safety net is gone. You could still fix this, she said. I already did, I replied. She left without another word, and I understood something important in that moment. She hadn't lost me when I uncovered the loans. She lost me when she assumed I'd carry them forever.
The loans were called in early autumn. Not all at once, not dramatically, one notice at a time, arriving in identical envelopes with neutral language and precise deadlines. No moral judgment, no sympathy, just arithmetic asserting itself. Alex's business didn't fail loudly. It thinned. Vendors stopped returning calls. Accounts were frozen. The optimism dried up the moment it was required to produce something measurable. Within weeks, the office space was empty. Within a month, the company name stopped appearing anywhere that mattered. Lena didn't fight it. That surprised some people. It didn't surprise me. Once the paperwork is clear, resistance becomes expensive. Every signature led back to her, every transfer, every guarantee. There was no ambiguity left to argue over. Even her attorney advised against escalation. The law doesn't care how cheerful you were when you made a decision. It only cares that you made it. We finalized the separation shortly after. It was quiet, professional. The judge skimmed the documents, nodded once, and moved on to the next case. No speeches, no dramatic pauses. Our marriage ended the way it functioned at its best, efficiently. Lena tried once more to reframe things afterward, not to reconcile, but to soften the narrative.
She used words like misjudgment, pressure, miscommunication. She avoided words like deception and choice. I listened without interrupting, and then told her I wasn't interested in rewriting history. Some stories don't need edits. They need acceptance. Life settled into something simpler after that. My finances became boring again, predictable, transparent, the kind of boring that lets you sleep through the night. My days were quieter, my thoughts clearer. I noticed how much energy I'd been spending maintaining a stability that wasn't real. People asked if I regretted how it ended. I don't. I didn't expose her publicly. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't raise my voice or threaten anything. I didn't even try to make her understand what she'd done. I just stopped absorbing the consequences for her choices. And that, it turns out, is enough. Lena wanted control, freedom, and optimism without limits. I wanted structure, consent, and accountability. Those things can coexist, just not when one person decides the rules don't apply to them. In the end, I didn't take anything from her. I simply let her keep exactly what she insisted on taking all along: responsibility. And once that transfer was complete, everything else balanced itself naturally.